Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes sat down for an unedited interview. 2 hours and 18 minutes of content. But I know that majority of you probably don't want to sit there for 2 hours. So we're going to break down the most impactful parts of this interview when it comes to the Israel AIPAC United States relationship. And so we're going to break down those clips in this video. We are going to have another video where we talk about the other stuff that Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson talked about. But Aaron, go ahead, introduce this first clip for us that we're going to be talking about.
This first clip is Nick Fuentes saying that we have no strategic benefit to be allied with Israel. Roll the clip.
They did, but in a very general and vague way. As you know, it's never specific. They would say things like, well, they're our partner in the Middle East. They're a democracy in the Middle East. Just as very vague. It's rhetorical. And I read The Israel Lobby by Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt, and they break it down very succinctly that there's no real strategic benefit. Actually, there's strategic liability. Eastern Mediterranean is not a strategically important region. The intelligence that Israel provides is not useful. Actually, it's detrimental because they frequently lie. The technology we give them, they pass along to the Chinese, which was a big scandal. So I would give them all this and say, yeah, that's not adding up. And they would say, yeah, well, you really just can't talk about that.
And that's my whole point with defending Nick Fuentes, is that he's attacked for his delivery, not for his arguments. I don't think there's any debate that this book that he's quoting, and I would add another book, it's called The Culture of Critique by Kevin MacDonald, argues that certain Jewish intellectual and political movements in the 20th century developed strategy that actively worked towards undermining Western society. They promoted assimilation, multiculturalism, assimilation, and immigration policies that are really for open borders. And they have been a strategic liability, not a strategic ally. If you consider the USS Liberty attack by Israeli forces, if you look at the 1980s, we have a case where Israel's acquisition of U.S. nuclear secrets through espionage led to vast amounts of classified intelligence being leaked to the Chinese. We have AIPAC with their undue influence over our entire government, both Democrats and Republicans. And if you look at the last 20, 30 years, have we done better as a country by entangling ourselves in all of these foreign wars? We're bankrupt. We have a veteran suicide problem that is unmatched. Israel has not been a strategic ally. They have been a net negative. And if they were a strategic ally, our neoconservative Republican friends would be able to come to the table and articulate their answer. And to Nick's point, they never do. They obfuscate, they get angry, and then they call you names.
Well, this is very heavily kind of bringing me back towards the Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz interview, where basically he straight up asked Ted Cruz, like, why are we paying our quote-unquote greatest ally to spy on us? Like, we're giving them money. They're turning around. They don't seem like a very good friend or ally to us. And Ted Cruz had to admit that Israel was spying on us. Like, that's what came out of that interview that I think shocked the American public. And there's some other stuff in this that we're about to get to that I think is going to shock the American public as well. Because when I heard it, I went, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that came out of Tucker Carlson's mouth." So, Aaron, what's our next clip?
Nick Fuentes comes out and separates himself as a uniquely different kind of brand of conservative. The context is he's going around the room at some political event articulating why he's a conservative, and he offended and shocked his conservative audience by stating that the reason he's conservative and he rallies behind a conservative cause because he believes that our immigration policy is not simply destroying the United States, or that it's a problem in the way in which conservatives have been discussing this for decades. He's saying it's destroying Western civilization. And that's taken it to a level that I believe separates Nick Fuentes and, I would argue, a huge swath of the American public and the Republican establishment and the neoconservative establishment. Roll the clip.
And they get to me and I said, well, I'm a conservative because we're losing our civilization because of mass immigration. America doesn't resemble America anymore. France is no longer France. I said, and if we don't conserve the demographics, forget about the rest. That's what we need to conserve. And I said that. And I was told later on that at that moment, I was immediately disqualified by the people that were running the job training.
On what grounds?
They said that was too far right. That was too extreme.
Nick Fuentes is called a racist for this position. And that's unfair because in order to be racist, that means you have to have a superiority complex in thinking that another group of people based on the melanin in their skin are somehow inferior. This is not Nick's belief system. And he will show you in a clip later, this is not his system. This is ad hominem attack torn directly from the leftist playbook that we can no longer argue your point, so we're just going to call you names. So allow me to attempt to articulate Nick's position and why he's called a racist unfairly. He's arguing for the demographic protection of this country. And he's arguing that that's important because he, not in this interview, but in a previous interview, he quotes Pat Buchanan and that race isn't everything, but it's something. And I do have to agree with him because every race, every tribe, every people group brings value systems that are uniquely different from other groups. That's the reason why humanity is divided along tribal and ethnic lines. That doesn't mean that you hate the other person. It means that you want to preserve the value system of your country. And so Nick's looking at open borders. He's looking at the demographic changes in this country, and he's wanting to have a conversation about it. And he's asking the question, is this a good idea that Anglo-Americans who have been the majority in this country since its inception all of a sudden become a minority? I mean, that's a major demographic shift. And if you don't think that's a problem, I think come to the table and make your arguments for that. But to call Nick Fuentes a racist is a lazy way of trying to silence him when you refuse to debate him on his actual points, which is we are witnessing a demographic shift in this country and there's going to be implications and we should be having a conversation about this. He's not saying that brown people or black people are bad, okay?
So when I spent a lot of time in Europe, I was cycling over in Europe not too long ago. France does not seem like France anymore unless you're in the small little villages. Paris is overrun by Nigerians. If you go to like Alpe d'Huez in the French Alps, they're all South African that are working there for the summer and the winter. Belgium's the same way. You go to Brussels, it does not feel like Belgium. You go into the little small towns, and it feels like Belgium. You feel like you're in a foreign country. And I feel like it's the same thing that happens in this country. You go to a place like Chicago, and you go, this is America? Right? This is America. You go to a place like LA and you go, this is America. Yeah. But then you go not too far down the road and you go to San Diego or Huntington Beach and you're like, this is America. Right? Like we have certain places that have just lost its culture because we've allowed it to just become little everything.
Yeah, and there's a different type of immigration that's happening. And I think that's what's important also to note is that the immigrants that we had coming in through Ellis Island during the major immigration wave of the 20th century, these people all came prepared to speak English. They came without the promise of EBT cards and government welfare. They came with the intention to work extremely hard and to build a nation. Today, we're bringing in a different group of people. These people are coming from countries that have been bombed by U.S. foreign policy for decades, and they're a little bitter about that. We're bringing in people from the lower economic rungs of society, and we're subsidizing their ability to come into this country by flying them in spending taxpayer dollars to bring people who have no intention to work hard. Their intention is to leech off the system, and I can provide the receipts because during the Obama administration, there was a paid campaign in Central America targeting the most uneducated, poorest people of El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, and Honduras, and saying, if you come to El Norte, we are going to have an EBT card waiting for you. We're going to have a 5-star hotel room waiting for you. You guys, Nick Fuentes is not anti-immigrant. He's critiquing the immigration policies that we have today because they are destroying our heritage and our nation. We would love to have immigrants come into this country like we did in the 20th century and roll up their sleeves and get ready to build. We're not getting that anymore. So we're talking about an orange and apples comparison. That's I think the issue with Nick.
No, I agree with you because back at the Ellis Island stuff and everything, like that's when I have relatives that came into that, and they were like, no, want to be an American, want the American dream, want to do the American work, want to build and prosper and make our own things. We want to learn English. We want to learn American culture and be part of the whole thing and be that classic melting pot kind of thing. And yeah, not all of them were treated good when they first came here and stuff, but they really, really put the effort forth and they wanted to learn everything they could and they wanted to put the effort. Now it's like, no, you have to do what I'm saying and I want my culture to be the culture here. And you're like, that's not really the American way. We're more individualistic and hardworking and freedom loving kind of thing. So,
and we've lost our American culture. Like that value that you're talking about, Jim, of being hardworking and wanting to build is no longer the zeitgeist.
Yeah, my grandfather told me, he's like, no, when I was a kid, it was he's from Sicily. They speak Italian. He's like, yeah, no Italian, da da da, but you're out there doing stuff, speak English, be part of the community, the neighborhood, da da da. There's a lot more stuff to it because they were fighting other people too, like the Irish and all that. But still, the point being, they really wanted to try to acclimate and be American as American could be, and really wanted to do good and work hard and make that American dream come true. So.
No, I don't think it ever did because I know who I am. I had a very firm grounding of what I'm about, which is that I was deeply Catholic, and I still am, deeply patriotic and pro-American. And I don't consider myself temperamentally to be an angry or a hateful person. So I never, in other words, lost my center. You know, they say this thing about you look into the abyss and the abyss stares back into you. That never really happened to me. I was frustrated. I was frustrated because I felt like I was being denied a level playing field, opportunity, and it wasn't fair. I felt like I was right, and these people that were basically hypocrites, grifters, not really conservative, they were controlling the conversation, and as a consequence, they were controlling the Republican movement. And I really perceive this as like an urgent crisis, because if we wanted Trump to deliver America first, to realize it, the Trump movement had to transform the conservative movement to reflect the victory that Trump won.
That's why I love these long form interviews, and that's why I love the internet, is because in the old days of the 90s and early 2000s, where we were subject to just corporate media and clips and headlines, the corporations and the enemy could perpetuate these mythical figures that were these boogeymen, and they could, edit and splice clips and create a Frankenstein creature that everybody's going to be afraid of. But instead, what we have now is we have a 2+ hour interview, a long form that you can sit and listen to and watch. And what you'll learn is that Nick Fuentes is probably about as average American as there possibly can. Is an upper middle class Catholic boy growing up in a good part of Chicago, playing baseball, was not raised by skinheads, was not raised by wolves like the corporate media would like for you to believe. He actually was looking at the conservative movement as a well-researched person. This guy's read dozens of books. He's obviously very informed. He brings the receipts. He speaks as an informed person, and he's speaking from an informed standpoint where he's critiquing the conservative movement intellectually as opposed to just attacking it ad hominem. The guy is about as American as everybody else out there. This is not some frothing at the mouth skinhead that the media wants you to believe. He's a Catholic boy. He likes baseball. What seems to be the problem here?
Well, so this is a different conservative party. That's a different Republican party. That the Trump party is completely different than the Bush party, right? It's completely different than, the previous, 4, 5, 6, 7, 20 Republican presidents. It's a different party. And so I do want to roll this next clip. We're going to about 39:30 on the on this interview. Let's roll this so we can continue this conversation on the Republican Party. Here we go.
And at that point, I basically mounted an attack on the conservative establishment from the outside. I sort of realized that there's sort of two ways you could play this. You could infiltrate the conservative movement. I could recant all my views and apologize and pretend to be one of them and bypass the gatekeepers, the censors. I said, or I could kind of be in the wilderness and I would be alone and I would be radioactive, but I could challenge the credibility and legitimacy of the conservative movement and its claim to represent conservatives. And that was kind of the mission, was to say, no, the immovable standard is America first. I'm going to represent it. And the conservative movement is going to have to move to me. I will not move towards them. And I thought, maybe I'll make money and maybe I won't, but I'm going to try it for a couple of years and I'll see how it goes.
So, but the sight picture in your head was enemy is conservative movement.
Yes.
So I want to come back to this because I want to go to Jim for a second. Jim, you just joined the Republican Party not too long ago. Can you tell us how you look and view the Republican Party and maybe how it's different now than it was 10 years ago in your eyes?
I did just join it because, a couple of you were telling me I should, and it's probably more optimal and so on and so forth. But to be honest about it, I honestly don't like it. I think it's a lot of hypocrites, a lot of sneak thieves, leveragers, liars, cheats, a lot of people that are just trying to put on a mask to get votes and pretend like they are when really they're not. They're not about conservative values or like, just politically conservative with like, politics and funding and stuff. They just seem to be more, I want to put the guys on of this, or I go to church and I'm a Republican so then I can get votes and put up a mask and a facade. It's a lot of WWF fake characters as far as I'm kind of concerned, to be honest. And I know that's,
Oh yeah, brother.
right. And I know that's probably not a good perception, but being new to it, I'm like, wow, I thought this was going to be a lot sterner, a lot stronger, and not so fake, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm not the best at articulating it, but that's what I seen, to where I'm kind of very disillusioned, and I have a bad taste in my mouth from kind of joining, to be honest with you.
I'm a Republican because of what the Republican platform stands for. I'm a Christian because what Jesus Christ did for me. I'm a Christian because the Bible is the true and inspired word of God. It's flawless in its writing. But people suck, right? Like,
Yeah.
just because people are terrible, and I've been in churches that do not uphold the greatest standards, that don't preach what should be preached,
Yes.
that don't act the way that they should act, doesn't mean that I'm ever going to stray from what is biblical and what is right and what is godly. Just because the Republican Party has leaders in it and people and politicians that don't uphold the Republican platform does not mean I'm going to leave the Republican platform. And I think that's what the constant media drive has been, is you should just leave the party. And we've seen people leave the party that still vote conservative, but they leave the party and become unaffiliated or independent or nonpartisan, whatever word you want to use, because, well, there's hypocrites in the party. But that doesn't change why you became Republican to begin with. You became Republican because of what the platform stands for. Aaron, what do you think?
I think that I was thinking of a boating and a sailing analogy as you were talking. I have no idea why. But I think what I heard you saying is that the Republican Party is like a boat. It's a tool. It's a mechanism that you can ride on to get to your destination. Like, you want to see the conservative agenda be fulfilled in America. I would like to think that you, Jason, want an America first agenda. You want our government to put America's priorities first. So you want to vote Republican because you think that that's the vehicle that's going to manifest that.
I want a God first agenda. I want a Jesus first agenda, and the America first agenda is closer to the Jesus first agenda that I want than any other agenda that has taken place in this country for the last 250 years. That's why I continue to support this America First effort, because it is closest to what I believe is what God wants for this country. Now, I don't think that the America First agenda is perfect, and I will say that. I don't think that it's the most ideal situation, but it is definitely better than any other agenda that's been put before this country for the last 250 years.
Where I was going with the boat analogy is that your boat has a hole in it and it's filling up with water, and it's not going to do what you think it's going to do, Jason.
My America First agenda?
Yes.
Well, I just
Rock
told
boat.
you. I just told you. I'm not a I'm not sold out to the America First agenda. I think that we should all be sold out to Christ, not to any agenda that takes place on this earth.
Amen.
And, just because we stand by an American First president doesn't mean that that is the most important thing in our life. And I think that too many of the conservatives separate their faith and country. And they've tried so hard, this entire movement, the liberals, everybody has tried so hard to put a divide between your faith and your country. And that is not what is called for biblically. And that is not what we should do. And it's not what we've done in the past. It's not historically been this huge separation of church and state. They've taken that far out of context. And they've created this divide to where basically faith does not intertwine with politics, and it should. But let's roll this next clip because I don't want to spend too much time on that.
But first, you have to win that internal battle among the audience that the conservatives have. Because that's really the problem, is that they have usurped. The base is extremely conservative, extremely anti-left. But the Republican Party, like those that represent them, are not at all. A lot of them are atheists, a lot of them are gay, a lot of them are feminists. And so I said, like, we kind of need to rally, like Trump did, rally the base against the establishment, and then take the fight to the left as the true alternative. And if you can win that, then you win the country. That was kind of Trump's model.
I think Nick Fuentes is emblematic of MAGA 2016. They wanted this firebrand candidate who says, I will burn this Republican Party down if I have to. And Nick says in the interview in another part, which we're not going to roll, is that's exactly what got Nick Fuentes on the MAGA train, is this larger-than-life character that literally had decided to just burn the Republican Party down if necessary, and he wants that back. And he's arguing that the average American, the average conservative, the base of Donald Trump is far more to the right and far more aligned with Nick Fuentes than they are with the establishment Republican Party. So Nick Fuentes is just early. And the fact that he was number one on Spotify for 36 minutes, I think shows you that this is where America is at. That America resonates with the conservative message of Nick Fuentes than they do with the Republican.
Aaron, do you want to introduce the next clip? This is the 54-ish minute part.
Yeah, so what I love also about Nick is that his actions speak louder than his words. He has been banned and censored on every potential platform. He lost his job at Right Side Broadcast Network. He lost the opportunity to work with the Daily Wire. You've never seen this guy on Fox News. He was in the proverbial basement of media for a very long time. He's been attacked by Mark Levin and Prager and Ben Shapiro and all of these quote-unquote conservative gatekeepers. So he's taken risk that has cost him serious capital. And he continues to take these risks. And in this clip, he states his mission. And I think he can be taken on his word because you can judge a man by all of the heat that he's gone through. Roll the clip.
Here's my substantive disagreement, because as a Catholic, I could not agree more with you.
Yes.
In what you're saying. I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all, and we have to recognize that
we're required to.
Yes. And especially Aquinas says the Jews are a witness people, and so they actually have special protections under the law, according to Catholic philosophy. But I guess my substantive disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness, Jewish identity, the Jewish religion, because clearly the state of Israel and the neocons are deeply motivated by that ethnic identity, and their allegiance to Israel proceeds from that. You know, the plan of Greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
Well, this is just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. I mean, that's just so obvious to me. But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true. And it's true in my case, actually. But whatever. but because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way. And that's how we're supposed to judge. Like, I think that's true.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I guess the disagreement is you say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is a reality.
Okay, I can relate with that. I get that because sometimes there's things that I like have stances on or opinions on or something, and then it's like, oh, you didn't say that the right way. You didn't go about that the way we wanted you to tell it, or you weren't as fluffy about it, or you didn't use the PC talk. And you're like, no, because like the best example I have is like my stance against like sex offenders and stuff, even being in our community. And it's like, well, and I'm like, no, it's yay or nay. It doesn't matter what I think. It's right or wrong. So I can relate with him on that. That's for sure.
The next clip is going to be, I think, the most important clip of this interview, because this is the reason why Nick Fuentes has been under heat, in my opinion, the reason why he is the conservative boogeyman. He lays out in very plain English why he's critical of a Zionist influence over our government. And he clearly articulates his position on Judaism and the Jewish people. We're going to roll the clip, and we're going to come back and kind of fill in some spaces and add some context to what he has to say. Roll the clip.
And call me all these names, the most dangerous anti-Semite. I'm not even an anti-Semite. And they're not doing that to you because, this is my view, and this is not necessarily your fault, but because they're like, Fuentes discredits the reasonable people because he's always banging on about the Jews. And so he makes everyone else look like a Nazi. And so it's like he's playing a pretty valuable role in the same way that Israel has always funded extremism throughout the Middle East, including Hamas, because it discredits the reasonable people. That's a fact.
Yeah. I would just say I disagree. I mean, because you said the other day, they like me. I don't know what you're talking about when you say that, because
I don't know.
Let me just kind of rebut that.
Well, by the way, I'm not saying you have anything to do with this. I'm just saying I've noticed the phenomenon.
Totally. And I just reject that because they have been messing with me for my entire adult life. I mean, the ADL got me banned on YouTube. The SPLC posted my house on their website.
What do you mean posted your house?
They posted a photo of my house on their website.
How can they do that?
I guess that's a free speech thing.
The SPLC posted a picture of your house on their website?
Yes.
When?
In 2022.
Actually?
Yes, they wrote an article. They said Nick Fuentes bought a building in this city, and they said we interviewed his neighbors and property records reveal this and that. And on the front page, the picture for the article is my house where I live.
What Nick Fuentes is doing is he's creating a distinct definition between being a Jew and being a Zionist. Not all Jews are Zionists, but not all Zionists are Jews. So what is Zionism? Zionism is a political ideology that ties Israel as an ancestral homeland to the Jewish people. So that is a clear political ideology that many Jews disagree with. So in other words, Nick isn't attacking Judaism, nor is he attacking Jewish people at large. He's critical of Zionism, and now is the opportunity to understand what Zionism is.
Okay, so Zionism's the political aspect, right?
Yeah, Zionism is a political ideology and a nationalist movement where its core objective is the establishment and maintenance of a Jewish nation state, which is defined as a Jewish ancestral homeland. And it's been marked as a secular and nationalist movement that has carried European hatred, in my opinion, since the 19th century.
Okay, got it. So he's mad at like the PAC stuff, and he's mad at the dual citizenship and politics and all that kind of stuff.
His beef is, why is the conservative movement in America been co-opted by Zionists? And he's been unfairly labeled as a Jew hater because of it. And that is the correction, I believe, that was made in the Tucker Carlson interview.
Gotcha. Okay, so Zionism is the political aspect, Judaism is the religious aspect, and he's
not attacking.
Definitely showing the separation between them is what's going on with this interview.
He's not harboring people because he hates them for the religion they practice. He's being critical of a political ideology that's putting America in the back seat when America should be in the front seat.
Let's roll this clip from Rabbi Weiss.
Oh, I was
Zionism
hoping you were
is
going to say
not
Rabbi
Judaism.
Shmuley.
And on the ground in Gaza, can you maybe share some experiences that you had interacting with Palestinians?
Each and every day was an experience that really should be recorded and repeated. But I think we speak about going to visit, that I went to visit after one of the Operation Castlet, I think it was called, after the bombing, the just horrific attacks where they slaughtered families. And I went to Zaytun. It was a Samuni family where it's like around 30 members of one family was murdered. Today, unfortunately, you hear this constantly. Whole members of a family are just killed in one bombing. But we went there, and there was some the members left over from the family, and we went and cried with them, and they embraced us. And even though we are Jewish, yet they understood to differentiate between a Jew and the ones who are attacking them, that it's the Zionist state of Israel. They understood, and they showed warmth and friendship, and exceptionally the children who really who technically shouldn't know or understand the difference, yet they embraced us, and we found this. We went to visit the hospitals and the orphanages, and we only found friendship, warmth, and a yearning that we can be together in peace.
So in his name tag, or his tag that he's wearing, says, "Pray for a speedy dismantlement of Israel."
The rabbi's tag?
That's what the rabbi's tag says. It says, a Jew, not a Zionist. Pray for the speedy dismantlement of Israel. And this is kind of what Nick is talking about when it comes to Zionism. It's what the conversation that we've had has become about, whether or not there's this like intermixing or this expectation that if you're a Jew, you're a Zionist, that if you're a Jew, you're basically dedicated to the nation state of Israel. And Nick is going to talk more about that. Do you want to introduce the next clip?
Yeah, I'll introduce the next clip. The next clip is going to be Tucker's view of Nick's role in this information war. He alleges that Nick is perhaps an unwilling pawn of the neoconservatives, the Bush Republicans, the pro-war, pro-tax Republicans that Trump allegedly dismantled. Tucker is essentially saying, you are being used because your rhetoric is so over the top that you're being used to make people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens sound reasonable. Let's roll the clip.
Because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world. There are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized. And many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans. They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that.
Yeah, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Jim just showed me, the Anti-Defamation League, and AIPAC are all arms of Israel. They are all weapons to control the conservative movement, to control the narrative, which is ultimately to control our foreign policy and our government. And Nick Fuentes is exposing this. He's saying, why is the Uniparty, why is Hakeem Jeffries, why is, what's his name, the minority speaker of the majority speaker of the Republican Party, Superman? Mike. Why is
Johnson.
Mike Johnson? Why is Mike Johnson? He reminds me of before Superman became Superman. Like, why is he getting money from the ADL and AIPAC? And I think this is an important question. No, that does not make Nick Fuentes an anti-Semite. That makes him a engaged American citizen who cares about his country.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of this sounds like that stuff. What is it? Fog, fear, obligation, guilt, like manipulation stuff. Or am I really off on what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's an information war. They're trying to.
Sounds like everything's just fear, obligation, guilt. The old fog definition.
Fog of war.
Just the whole fog thing. It sounds like they're just trying to scare people, make you feel obligated, or guilt trip you into being like, no, you need to be about it. Or am I way off base with the stuff that I'm hearing?
No, and at one point in this interview, and we had talked about this earlier, at one point in this interview, they both made comments about how they thought each other were feds. That this was basically some sort of like rhetoric. They were putting the rhetoric out to somehow drive the American population to believe something different or to believe in some sort of rhetoric. And it's just intriguing. And it shocked me when Tucker Carlson came out on air and basically accused Israel of funding Hamas.
Yeah, I heard that part. I was like, what? Some false flag stuff and all that fun-filled adventurous?
I love that part because I think like 4 minutes ago politically, I was a wild, frothing at the mouth conspiracy theorist for even uttering those words that I think was going to get you banned on YouTube probably immediately in 2022, 2023. So it just goes to show you how far we've come in this experiment of asking questions. You know, Charlie Kirk himself in one of his last interviews with Ben Shapiro, ironically, said, "Ben, I've been asking some questions. You know, I have some questions about Israel." So, you know, Nick is not alone in his questioning. And I was actually on Instagram last night. Anybody knows who Officer Tatum is? He's a Salem media personality. He's, you know, got probably millions of followers.
Yeah. I like his stuff.
He posted something that was very pro-Israel, and I was going through the comment section, and literally every comment with like thousands of likes was like, Tatum's an agent for Israel. Tatum's getting his AIPAC money. I mean, the tide is turning, ladies and gentlemen. There is a serious ideological rift on the right, and this is getting addressed in real time. And I think Nick Fuentes is that proverbial Molotov cocktail that just flew in through the window, and everyone's got to deal with it now.
So basically, anybody we thought might be okay-ish, we need to see who they're funded by now. Essentially, follow the money, the old follow the change, where it's coming from.
Well, follow
who's paying who to say what and to be a part of what.
Who's feeding who tells you a lot.
Yeah, no, I guess so. Because I like Tatum's stuff, but if it's a whole thing with that too, then it's got to be kind of questioning his stuff. But that's a thing too, though. Nowadays, like, I don't know if you've noticed, but don't ask questions. Why are you asking this question? And it's like that's the number one thing for intelligence or just seeking knowledge, is ask questions.
Critical thinking. Next clip.
112-ish.
112-ish. Why Jews are unique and identity politics is a reality. So it's an interesting exchange because there's a disagreement on identity politics. For so long, the American right has always been critical, right, of identity politics. We've always kind of labeled the left as engaging in identity politics as it being a negative thing. And ironically and interestingly, Nick almost wants to redefine identity politics as not necessarily a negative thing, but a real thing that has to be dealt with. But it's not in the definition in the way the left has been defining it and using it. Nick, I think, is redefining what identity politics is. Let's roll the clip.
I think that's a unique issue, especially in the Republican Party, especially in the conservative scene. And, you know,
So how would you like this all to be resolved?
What I would like is for the U.S. government to not be influenced by these kinds of foreign allegiances, not with money that comes from, you know, American citizens like Sheldon Adelson, not from foreign lobbyists. So, I mean, in terms of tangible things, I don't think we disagree on any of it. Like registering AIPAC and FARA, banning dual citizenship. Like I'm basically in agreement.
I think 80% of the public agrees with those things.
So
that's kind of what gets me a little bit annoyed. It's like these are like America First, the concept. It's the most popular, self-evidently true idea you could have.
Nick was explaining why Zionist influence undoes an America First, undoes an America First agenda, because the heart of Zionism is Israel first. Literally, that is the core of Zionism. So they're incompatible. And what Nick is articulating is having an Israeli first agenda in charge of an America First movement is a movement that's going to fail. You cannot put Israel first and America first at the same time. You have to choose one of two masters. And Nick is saying, I'm an American, I'm US born, I'm America first, I care about America. America should be the priority in America, not Israel. That's all he's saying.
Okay. I can agree with that. Sounds like we should be taking care of our own stuff and not prioritizing other people's stuff, essentially.
And Zionism's a problem because at the heart of Zionism, Israel has to be first. And that's a problem.
So this last clip is Nick Fuentes discussing what he believes the solution is. Tucker straight up asked him, what would you like the end result to be? And this is Nick's response. Let's roll this.
So how would you like this all to be resolved?
What I would like is for the U.S. government to not be influenced by these kinds of foreign allegiances, not with money that comes from, you know, American citizens like Sheldon Adelson, not from foreign lobbyists. So, I mean, in terms of tangible things, I don't think we disagree on any of it. Like registering AIPAC and FARA, banning dual citizenship. Like I'm basically in agreement.
I think 80% of the public agrees with those things.
So
that's kind of what gets me a little bit annoyed. It's like these are like America First, the concept. It's the most popular, self-evidently true idea you could have. Like, don't let foreign powers, especially tiny ones far away, control your country. Like, of course not. Everyone agrees with that on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, number one, do what John F. Kennedy intended to do with his executive order 2 weeks before he was shot in the head on live television in downtown Dallas. Require that AIPAC and ADL register under FARA laws. Every other country that is able to lobby our federal government has to register as a foreign agent under U.S. law. Why is Israel not following the law? Let's start there. Number two, he referred to these Jewish billionaires like Adelson, who gives billions of dollars to campaigns. These people maintain dual citizenship. You cannot have undue foreign influence over our politics when you have billionaires that have an allegiance to a foreign country deciding who gets to be primaried in these important elections and who gets to win these elections. So I think that these are very practical solutions that are very America first. And I agree with Tucker Carlson. If Donald Trump, Tucker didn't say this, but if Donald Trump were to go before the American people and say, I want AIPAC and ADL to register under FARA, and I don't think anybody that's influencing American politics should have dual citizenship, I would think that Tucker would be right that 80% of his base in America, maybe not the left, but Actually, ironically, the left would probably agree on some of that because they also have equally been critical of a lot of this activity. If you look at the Young Turks lately, and yes, I think this would be well received by the American people. I think 80% of people agree with this. I don't think Nick Fuentes is an extremist for taking this position whatsoever. Because if he is, then Tucker Carlson and John F. Kennedy and a lot of millions of Americans would all be considered extremists.
No, I think you're right. I think there's no point in it, in the dual citizenship and all the influence of another country on our country, because then it just makes everything muddled up and it's serving a whole different agenda. And I think he is right, that 80%. I think it's 80% of the whole population too.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to go down the street and talk to somebody and be like, you know what, brother, I really think we just need to continue to allow Israel to give billions of dollars and to not register. There is no practical defense to allowing Israel to break the law.
I forgot about the JFK thing. I'm glad you brought it up because that was a whole thing going on just before they snuffed him out.
Well, we're not allowed to have these conversations, which is also incredibly sus.
Yeah, but that's a big red flag. If somebody doesn't want you having a conversation or asking a question or even looking at something or questioning something or seeking the knowledge of the information or the actual answer, then that's a big red flag.
Well, it's a huge red flag when the conservative right engages in leftic tactics of censoring and labeling you naughty names for disagreeing with them. I mean, I thought we were the party that dunked on the left for calling names and not be willing to have a conversation.
It's almost like that Marxist manifesto thing where they talk about infiltrating the government and to have the influence and stuff, but on a right side versus the left side of it, but implementing the same tactic, right?
Well, absolutely.
That's how I'm kind of reading it.
Well, and just look at all the censorship that's taken place, and we don't have to go back very far. If you don't want to believe the censorship on Israel, go back to COVID, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think most conservatives can go, look, we can look back and go, okay, the censorship and what took place during COVID, knowing that ivermectin was a powerful drug in the fight, knowing that hydroxychloroquine made an impact, knowing far ahead of time that this was a leak from a lab that now we know is 100% true. Questioning why this vaccine was allowed to be rushed through the entire FDA process to the American public, and then not being allowed to question the side effects of that vaccine. This is not a free country in terms of free speech like we want to believe. This is not a free country in terms of a free economy like we like to think. And we talked about that with the Mike Callicrate interview not too long ago. Yep. And so you can find all this stuff on our Facebook, YouTube page, on faithfamilyfit.org. But there's more to this conversation that we want to touch on. We're not going to touch on it in this video. We wanted to keep this video about AIPAC, about Israel, about Zionism. But stay tuned. We're going to have another video on the rest of this interview that's going to come out tomorrow. So closing thoughts.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're interested in weed, gambling, and pornography, that's what we'll be discussing on the next one. Nick Fuentes has a lot to say about that.
I love it.
Yeah, Jim.
I just say question everything, and if you want to look at anything, no matter what, it doesn't matter if it's a Pfizer or a AIPAC or whatever's going on, just follow the change and who's being paid for by who. And just ask questions and don't let nobody stop you seeking the information or knowledge.
Well, this is Spiritual Insurgency. Hit that subscribe button down below and join us every week. God bless.
You want it better, be better.